Iron Man 1 from 2008. What the heck?
Yeah, Iron Man, like, they're, all these flashbacks and stuff. And it's also funny because it's been such a long time since I've seen the first Iron Man and all this stuff. Like, because, like, his father, Howard Stark, is, like, played by the guy from Mad Men, but then he's not in these, like, flashbacks in the first movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this mythology's been kind of, like, revised and smoothed out and whatever, over time. But this is, like, the first draft,
With these Iron Man movies, particularly this one, because this was before, like, there's kind of focus group smoothing stuff out a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a kind of violent movie. Like, the first Iron Man's a little more... I was like, whoa, this is a little rough and tough. These Iron Man movies are kind of bloody, too, than the other Marvel movies.
Well, because it's like, it was still a gamble, and it was untried. Like, this was the one, like, they had, like, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, they had the X-Men movies, but this was, like, the first one that, like, the Marvel studio thing was going to do, and they were going to try to, bring everything all together. And so it was like a big risk. But I think having, like, Robert Downey Jr. at the center was a big risk, too. And he became, like, the core of it.
It's my favorite casting in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it's, like couldn't have nailed a better Tony Stark than Robert Downey Jr.
Well, that was the sense that I got the first time I saw this movie. It was like, I'm so excited to be watching an Iron Man movie. But, like, if you took, like, Iron Man out of the equation, like, I would still want to see a movie about these people. Like, like that cast, it would just, it's just kind of like...
I forgot Jeff Bridges was the villain in this. Yeah. I'm like, he's doing great work, like, screaming at people and menacing.
The dude is like the first villain in, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
He goes and pays for, like, a milk with, like, his check. He's like... And... Terrence Howard. I'm a Terrence Howard fan.
Yeah, me too.
But, like, what happened? Did you?
Yeah, I don't know the behind the scenes story. Like, yeah, he got replaced. Don Cheadle played the same role. Since then, I thought he was real good in it.
Yeah, me too.
Don Cheadle was good too.
Yeah. I wonder what it would have been like with Terrence Howard having him, like, be in later ones, like flying around in a suit. Because I don't think he gets to be in a suit in this one.
Yeah, I think in this one this is the one where he's like, next time, where he sees, like, the suit and he's like, next time. And it's like, well, next time it's gonna be somebody else.
He's like,
there is no next time.
He's like, hey Tony, see you in the sequel, bud. Yeah, like Robert Downey Jr. I was like super excited because
He's got Backstreet Boys facial hair.
I was just about to say that. His goatee expands and contracts through these movies.
Yeah. And it darkens.
It does.
Darkens as it goes on.
Yeah, no chance of him ever showing any grays in his hair. Mm-hmm. Just forget it. He's getting the Grecian in there. I like back in the Hollywood days when, like, people would let themselves just be older, you know what I mean?
Now, Robert Downey Jr., he's Morton Downey Jr.'s son, right? Yeah. Like, that's how that works.
Yeah.
Like, the last name is Downey Jr.
He's Oscar nominee for Chaplin. He was big in the early 90s, and then he had his little down period.
Yeah, where he would do, like, a staple of the indie movie circuit, like, he had a big name, he was a big star, but, like, they wouldn't put him on, like, big movies, but so he could still like eke out a career in sort of offbeat kind of stuff at a time when, like, the 90s was kind of a good time to be in independent movies. It was kind of like, that's kind of where the action was,
The year before this was Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, like, pumped to see him. I think this year, the same year, or either maybe the year before, the same year was Tropic Thunder.
Okay.
So he had these two movies the same year.
It's interesting thinking of all those movies, because, like, I so think of those movies as all those movies you named as being, like, different eras, but yeah, they were all, like,
within
right
a few years. Time. Yeah, he's got his, like, seaside home from, like, Heat, or, like, Michael Mann's Heat or whatever.
Like, when I was a kid, like, when this movie came out, they were talking about, like, oh, Iron Man, he's a D-list character, but he was never that to me. Like, Iron Man was one of my favorites. I just like the whole idea of, like, like a guy with, like, this suit of armor that's, like, all robotic and stuff.
Me too.
I always loved the concept. And one of the first comic characters I created was Eight Opus, the Myth of Eight Opus. And, I made a character that had the same kind of thing, where it's, like, this kind of, like, metallic suit that has like all kinds of like gadgets in it and stuff. So like that always appealed to me. And when I was a kid, I had 2 comic book subscriptions. I had a subscription to Classic X-Men, which like reprinted like the old X-Men stories from the 70s and early 80s, but with like supplemental material. So it was like a really good comic. And then the other one was Iron Man, just because I was like, yeah, Iron Man's really cool.
Love Iron Man.
And they had like the Secret Wars toys, and like the Iron Man, like that. I was like, I want that one. You know, I had Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Captain America, and like Iron Man just always it captured my imagination. Me. Yeah, that mask and like
it's kind of like why I like Batman too. Mm-hmm. Just like a regular guy in like with something a little extra special too, and also like the suit concept where like there wasn't any rule, like he could have as many like different weapons and stuff come out of it as you wanted to have.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Deus Ex Machina.
A never-ending supply of like cool.
He could have all the kind of superpowers, but then be real vulnerable to like this was like the beginning of it's just so funny thinking of what the world was like when this movie came out versus now, and like all this like Marvel superhero stuff was so obscure and like to me was sort of like secret knowledge that like I had and my friends had, but like the larger world didn't. So it was like so weird watch like around this time, and then you see Entertainment Tonight and they're talking about Pepper Potts, and it was just so weird.
Probably broke your brain.
Yeah, because it's like wait, you're not they're not supposed to know about Pepper Potts on Entertainment Tonight. That's like that's like mainstream stuff.
Very hard.
Like, Pepper Potts is like this deep cut character that like hasn't been in the comics for like like the Iron Man comics I was familiar with, like, she wasn't really in the story anymore. Like, she was more with, like, if you were reading, like, the old stuff from the 60s and stuff, Pepper Potts is in there. But
so for them to say they're like, like, stop, you're like John Tesh.
Yeah.
Relax.
That was the one, like, around that time, I was thinking, okay, you know what? You'll know that, like, the world has changed when they make an Inhumans movie. Because I thought, like, that's the line. Like, Iron Man is still kind of, like... But, like, when they start getting to those characters that, like, have never been on TV in any way, shape, or form before, that's when you're going to... And so, that was like 8 or 9 years ago they did, the Inhumans, like, TV movie.
Or even, like, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, I didn't... Like, they were so obscure, I didn't even think of them as an option. And then, like, the Eternals, Jack Kirby's Eternals, they're, like, even more obscure, and that was a movie.
Like, the cast of Good Morning America is, like swapping knowledge about like the eternal Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
When George Stephanopoulos is like my favorite Eternal.
Yeah, I love Ajax. Yeah,
and Tony Stark's got like his Batman, like Bruce Wayne, kind of like bottomless supply of cash.
Right. Yeah, and it's got like a redemptive arc too. That was pretty smart. And it's not too far from his origin in the comics. Like, it's pretty, in these early days, they were kind of hewing pretty close, but then just like bringing it into the modern day and using like, modern, touchstones.
Did they ever touch on his like his like alcoholism in like the movies and stuff?
I mean, in the movies, it's just like, oh, he's always drinking and stuff like that. But in the comics, they would have these like long stretches of time where he just like couldn't get out of bed in the morning. He just had, a demon in a bottle was like the famous storyline. But like he'd just be like, he was just like demolished, and so you'd have Rhodey, the Terrence Howard character, and then later the Don Cheadle character. Like there was a stretch of time where he took over as Iron Man while Tony Stark was like recovering or in the depths of alcoholism and stuff. So. He puts on the costume, now and then, he'll show up in the costume, but like, in the movies, but it's never like, to make it like the comics, you'd have to have like a whole movie where Tony Stark's sidelined and then he takes and then,
like leaving
War
Las
Machine
Vegas.
takes over. Yeah.
I forgot. It's been such a long time since I watched this one.
Like around the time when I had my subscription to Iron Man, like the big storylines were, he got a perm. Like, there was this, like, changing of the guard, like, in the 80s and 90s, where it was, like, they'd been having, like, the same artists and the same people drawing stuff since, like, the 60s and 70s. And now we're in the 80s, and so they're still drawing everybody with, like, disco hair and disco outfits. So it was, like, somebody woke up and was like, wait, we got to bring this thing into the modern day. So like Tony Stark and Rhodey, they meet like a hairdresser, and she gives Tony Stark like the curly mullet. He gets like the curly mullet.
Love the curly mullet.
And they get like manicures and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it was like that. So that was a big storyline. Was Tony Stark getting that? And then another one was there's like an assassination attempt on Tony Stark, and he gets shot, and then he gets paralyzed. In the 80s, there were like so many shakeups in comics that it was like, and so Rhodey takes over a little bit there, and it was like, oh, maybe Tony Stark, like this is gonna be because like in the 60s. Like in the origin, he has like a piece of shrapnel in his heart, and so he has to keep like the Iron Man vest on, like under his clothes at all times to keep his heart going. Yeah, but like it was like, oh, is this going to be the equivalent where he's like the cybernetics in Iron Man, in the Iron Man suit? Maybe he's able to, But they undid that. Like he had a miraculous recovery pretty short.
It reminds me of remember that show on Fox, Mantis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like kind of like it's very little Iron Man kind of manish from the 90s where I think the character was in a wheelchair and then like powered up with like.
Yeah, we'll have to do a Mantis.
We got it.
They had like the Armor Wars where it was like, basically like the Jeff Bridges character, it was Obadiah Stane, and it's kind of like hit like his evil other, like this industrialist who created all these like all these like robots and suits and stuff based on his armor design. So he had to he had to sort of fight all these other kinds of like Iron Man derivatives and stuff.
Jedediah Stane, or what he's like.
They call it a Jid Stane for short.
Mr. Stane. He's like wearing like white linen pants.
in like the original comic, it like takes place in Vietnam. Like it's in the Vietnam War, and he busts out. And then in this, it's I guess some unnamed early 2000s desert war kind of thing.
And then in a third one, he gets a surgery to pull the shrapnel finally out.
Yeah, because I mean they like by the time I was reading Iron Man, like that story had been resolved a long time. Like it's just like when you're going back to like the Marvel Masterworks, like going back to like the old stuff that you would see. Oh yeah, he used to have it in his heart. Yeah. When I was a kid and I had my subscription, he'd keep the Iron Man suit in like a briefcase, in like a valise or something. He
That's
had
so
Iron
awesome.
Man suit, and it was like, oh, how do they do that? And like in the letters column, they'd like, how does he do that? How does it? And what it would be is it would like. It was almost like it was made out of like chainmail or something, and it was like collapsible. You could flatten it and collapse it, but then when it switches on, then it like hardens.
I think he has in the second one when he fights Whiplash. They have it in a briefcase. It's like handcuffed to Jon Favreau.
Mm-hmm. What a career trajectory for Jon Favreau! Like thinking about like Swingers, Vegas, baby, Vegas. Yeah, and like he sort of starts there, and then he directs a bunch of stuff, but then he directs this, and then and now like all these years later, he's like the Star Wars guy. He's doing like the Mandalorian and Boba Fett. So he's like the sort like the big hits of Star Wars right now.
He did Chef, the movie Chef. He's like all the lead actresses in there are fawning over him. He's like the star. He's like I wrote and directed this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he from day one, from like Swingers, it's like he's writing movies to give him. He's like an actor. Like that's how he always viewed himself, was as an actor, and like he started making movies, like writing and directing to like give himself roles. But that was it. But then now he's a director who acts, and then and
he's
and like,
hilarious.
Yeah, and he is a real highlight of the. Of course, he's given himself the best lines.
Yeah.
But so he's doing this, and then he does Zathura, and he does all this stuff that like. When it's time to start making a Star Wars movie, it's like he's got, he's built up all the muscles, The
Mandalorian, he kicked ass directing that. Yeah. Did The Mandalorian season 3 come out yet?
Yeah, it just started. Yeah, and I'm doing I started watching season 3, and I'm doing a Mandalorian parody comic.
It's so funny
because like I've never done a parody comic before, and it just occurred to me, I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, this is episode 1, season 3.
So
it's like. It's very rare that I'm like into and following something that's like current, somewhat current and of the moment. Like it would have been probably better if I had started at season 1, but still, it's like, okay, I'm following pretty closely something that's somewhat current. Maybe I should make a parody of it, because like the parody was just writing itself as I'm watching it.
So fucking funny, and the tone is spot on too. And it'd be perfect in like Mad or something. But I could, whenever the Mandalorian speaks, I could just hear his voice being said out loud. But he's like, "You never guess who's riding shotgun." And he's like, "Don't thank me all at once." I was like, I knew exactly. I was like, I'm gonna be so excited to see who's in there. And then it's Baby Bogga and Baby Spock and Baby Palpa, and then little Baby Spock's going like this. Dude, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm having fun with, and again, it is like a parody. Like I've just never done it before, and it was kind of like, do I dare? Do I dare do a parody comic? But it's like, I'm having a lot of fun. It is nice doing a different genre, but still like in the, I like doing space opera and stuff. So I get to do space opera and kind of goof on something at the same time. It's so good.
It's cracking me up. He's like, don't make me all
yeah, because it's just I'm watching the episodes, and it's like they're up to 2 episodes so far in the new season, and it's like so ripe for parody.
I was so excited for the second page. He's like, don't. You never guess who's riding shotgun.
Season 1 was too cool to parody. You know what I mean? Like it would have been like, who do you think you are? But season 3, it's like
time for a parody.
It's getting the bloat. That needs needs a little a loving parody.
Baby Baka.
Baby Baka. I don't want to know what age Robert Downey Jr. is in Iron Man 1. Because like he seems like so old, so over the hill. It's like you were Brat Pack, now you're the you're ARP Pack. And it's like what? But I guarantee he's probably like 8 years younger than I am.
I know.
Now
I was
in
gonna
this
say,
movie.
I'm very scared to look up his age in this.
Yeah, we probably should anyway. But yeah, it's. He's got like the Simon Cowell fashions in this.
He definitely does. I bet you he actually also has the Simon Cowell black toilet paper. Like in the Total Recall store, we have black toilet paper with gold embossed.
That is something we have to set up.
He's like, if you think I'm looking at my own shit, think again.
This is a pretty nice looking movie, and I know that and this was also an era where we still weren't 100% sold on CGI, where it's like, I don't know, this CGI stuff is, time's ticking on CGI.
Yeah.
It's going to be out the door soon, and people are going to be going back. And this one, it was like, okay,
perfect amount.
Yeah, perfect amount. And how do you marry the non-CGI scenes to the CGI scenes and make it still seem like it's the same movie? And I thought this movie went a long way towards, sort of making that stuff work.
Exactly what I wanted. And even in the sequel, Iron Man 2, 2 years later, I was, during that F1 Grand Prix Monte Carlo thing, the race with the action scene with Mickey Rourke, I was surprised at the amount of practical effects happening there too. Yeah. Like when he hits the cars, I'm like, there's tumbling cars. And so it's perfect. Like they didn't go all out.
It has its share of CGI, but it's like, not like it still has like the CGI, and they kind of line up, and he's got so much like personality and body language, and you can see they kind of bring that to the CGI too. Like when he's in his Iron Man suit, it's not like all of a sudden he's like perfect.
And there's practical suits in a lot of scenes, like where Mickey Rourke's like, I just like to see a robot like in the frame. Yeah. And Mickey Rourke's like working on the robot, and like Robert Downey Jr.
it's kind of nice because like Robert Downey Jr. has his comeback with the first Iron Man, and then Mickey Rourke was sort of having a comeback with like the wrestler and stuff, and so it was nice for him to get a little moment.
Yeah, he was playing a tough guy in the second one.
Yeah, playing I think Whiplash was the name of the character.
Yeah.
Because there was like, when I had my subscription to Iron Man, there was like, there were like these 3 armored guys that Iron Man would always have to deal with, and one of them was like the Whiplash guy. He had like this laser whip, or not, it was like this electrical whip. And then there was another guy who was called like the Beetle, and he was, and he had this like, kind of like an Iron Man suit, but like a Beetle themed one. And then there was like a third guy. I forget who the third guy was. But.
The Beetle, he drives like a Volkswagen. Yeah. I don't know. And then the second one was also Jon Favreau too.
Yeah. And then the third one was Shane Black, one of your favorites.
Love Shane Black. Pittsburgh Zone.
Yeah, the third one felt like an old school action movie. Like it felt like an 80s action. It felt like you were going to see like Murtaugh and Riggs show up, you know.
Yeah, they even had a third act docks battle. They had to go to the docks to have the finale.
And they, you know, and like skulking outside of like a mansion, you know,
love it.
Something that was in like every TV show, every like Magnum PI,
Beverly Hills
every movie, you know.
You know, also a great 80s trope of the very wealthy bad guy who doesn't need to be involved in criminal activity but still is. They're like,
well, for the sport of it, for the fun, yeah. Because it's boring, being, you know, and you know, and all those you know, billionaires and stuff are all assholes. So you know, of course they're going to be getting into shit. And I loved the ending because it has like the sort of shock ending, the first one where it's like, because it's like, oh, you know, these superhero movies, he's going to drag out his secret identity, like. You know, maybe in the second one she'll find out he's Iron Man, or in the third one, or whatever. But then it's like, you know, very last scene, like the movie's all done, everything's all wrapped, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm Iron Man." You know, and then it goes straight into Ozzy Osbourne, into Black Sabbath's "I Am Iron Man," which I always wanted. Like, I was always hoping, you know, as a kid that like "I Am Iron Man" would somehow feed into like, you know, Iron Man. Like I'm not sure. Like I wonder what they were thinking of like when they wrote that song, Black Sabbath, because there's like Iron Man, which was like the Iron Giant, which was like a children's story in England. So I don't know if maybe he was referencing that Iron Man, or the Marvel one, or some other, like, because like you listen to the lyrics and stuff, it's not. It could be Iron Man, but it's like not quite. It's kind of like a horror version of Iron Man, but still great choice. Like I was really glad to hear it in there. We'll have to do a Black Sabbath. Episode,
oh my god,
a Black Sabbath episode, because I used to play all that stuff.
Oh, it cues up the credits in this, and then it plays like Fairies Wear Boots or like Sweet Leaf instead. You're like, what the fuck?
You know, when he's building the suit, this is, you know, real, like, Pittsburgh mythology, where it's like, you know, a guy in the steel mill making his...
Oh, yeah.
You know what?
A steel town girl on a Saturday...
I always... I have this, like, little superhero universe that I make in my comics and stuff, and it's, like, Pittsburgh-centric. I gotta do, like, a Pittsburgh steel... I gotta basically rip off Iron Man, but have it, you know, like, a guy in the 80s... in like a Pittsburgh steel mill making his like black and gold like armor, you know?
Dude, hell yeah.
Black and gold armor, like just
hell yeah.
Just totally lift Iron, like just totally rip off Iron Man, lock, stock, and barrel, just paint him black and gold. His first job is to implode Three Rivers Stadium. They do a good way of adapting the comic, because in the origin in the comic, he has this like big bulky Iron Man suit. It's like the Iron Man suit that Jack Kirby designs for like the first, and it's that suit, it's that like in the first issue, it's like this big bulky gray suit, and then like issue 2 or something, they turn it into a big bulky golden suit, and then a couple issues later, more of like a slim, like red and gold, you know, closer fitting kind of thing, adjusting a design, you know, just in a comic, like streamlining a design, you know, from issue to issue. But they make it a story element in here where like his first iteration is this bulky, clunky one with like visible weld marks and stuff, because they're like building it on the fly, like an episode of the A-Team or something.
Oh my god!
They're like trapped in a closet with a bunch of raw materials, and they build, you know.
I wish. Oh my god! The A-Team Iron Man episode of it. Aww.
Well, imagine if in the A-Team they kind of like accidentally kind of like reverse engineer the Avengers, where it's like they're trapped in a garage with like a bunch of stuff, and then like BA builds this like armor for himself that's like Iron Man, and then you know, Hannibal builds like a shield.
Oh my god!
Like,
Faceman has a hammer.
Yeah, a big hammer. Exactly.
It's magnetic.
Yeah, they like approximate the Avengers.
Tom,
please
God.
Yeah, that could be. I could do a little comic of that, of like, what if the A team. What if the A team were the Avengers, and the A in A team stands for Avengers, and it all like circles back. Like the A team, we find out the A team was actually like a reimagining of the Avengers. They just never got around to like putting all the connecting all the dots.
That might be the greatest thing. Oh my god,
the Avengers team.
I'm
giving this stuff away.
Look at that. That's the
version 1.0.
It's one of my favorite Marvel ones. Like it is kind of a different feel, like you were saying. It's like action movie. Throwback.
Yeah, because it's still like they're still trying to figure out what these superhero movies are going to be. So like the closest stuff they had was sort of action movies, and
from the 80s. And you got another Shane Black. Helicopter assault on a cliffside like dwelling.
Yes, yeah.
Or beachside.
Yeah, and I remember when that when that third Iron Man came out, and they're like, "This is going to be the last Iron Man." And I was like, "What? Are you serious?" No, and I mean, it was the last Iron Man, but like he still shows up in like 8 more movies after that.
We definitely have to do do a Shane Black solo episode.
Well, you know what? Like, I've been doing those like Thor's Day comics, and like, because it's almost just an excuse for me to just read all the Thor comics straight through. Because I never, like, I've tried it at various times, but I never did. But this is like a way to kind of force me to like read through all of them, sit down, read through all of them in order. I'd love to do that with the Marvel movies, because I haven't seen these Iron Man movies in years. Like, I'd love to just like sit down and watch. And I know people have done
Let's do it.
And there's been like back before there were quite so many movies, they did have like, I think like leading up to Infinity War and stuff, and Endgame and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they had like these like film festivals where you could watch all of them in. But I'd like to sit down and watch them in order and kind of get watch the whole thing unfold.
You know what? On Disney Plus, we should do a. They have them. They have them listed all in chronological order. Okay. We should start at the beginning.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I think Captain America is like the first.
Okay,
one
because that's
list.
the 40s. Although now they'll have to amend it and put Eternals, because that takes place in like before the Earth is made.
I was gonna watch the Fall Guy from the beginning, but I kind of fell off the wagon with that.
It's tough. Like some of these TV shows and stuff. There's just so much fat on it. You can't.
I'm a stunt man. You get paid pretty well, but you don't stunt every day. So to pay the bills, I become a bounty hunter.
Before any of the super stuff happens, it's still still a pretty cool movie. Iron Man. At this point, it's a classic. At this point, it's a let's think about it. Okay, Iron Man. What year?
2008.
Let's do some of this horrible math.
No,
so 2008.
What is
that's
happening?
like 2008. It's 2023. So 2008. That's 15 years ago. 15 years ago, the first Iron Man. So think about you're watching Predator. And what year was Predator? Predator's
87.
87. So 15 years before Predator. So that would be 1972.
Yeah.
1972. So like when you were watching Predator, a movie from 1972, that would be like, like The Godfather.
Could have been a Harry Nilsson album.
Godfather was 1972. Deliverance was 1972. So it's 1987. You're watching Predator. And then it's like, oh, have you ever heard of a movie called The Godfather? Or, oh, have you ever seen Deliverance? That's what Iron Man is today.
I can't believe it.
It's like Deliverance when you were watching Predator.
Yeah, he's like Happy Hogan, gonna make it square like a pig.
Well, like Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts. Like when I was a kid reading Iron Man comics, Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts, those were like such corny names that were so like, oh yeah, that's like from the 60s. Like we're into like more modern stuff. Like Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts, that's old stuff. And then it's like, 30 years later or 20 years later or whatever.
All the jerks that were like giving me a hard time for like Star Wars, like anything even remotely comic book or like Dungeons and Dragons. Now they're like, what do you think's gonna happen to Pepper Potts' character? And I'm like, what the fuck is even happening?
And Happy Hogan has had a longevity because he's in like every one of these. He's in all the Spider-Mans and stuff.
Happy Hogan, we're gonna make it squeal like a pig.
Because they're like such Stan Lee names because they're like alliterative. Pepper Potts, Happy Hogan. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see ya.